Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsay, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of SuperPsyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. SuperPsyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of sitting with my father and watching the World Cup. It was obviously a spectacle, a huge moment, the convergence of the two best teams out of 48 who initially came to compete. And by the way, this is the whole world basically competing for these 48 positions and ultimately these final two. And to think about the fact that 1.5 billion people were watching simultaneously, and throughout the match itself, the multiple games, there were approximately 5 billion people watching. This is a massive moment every 4 years when hopefully the best in athleticism, in terms of soccer or football, depending on where you're from, is being played. And just wow is all I can say. It was really something to behold, and watching 22 men on the field just sweating it out in this final moment with so much pressure. A lot of life lessons to be had from this series of games and ultimately from this game itself, including some of the things that were said by the announcers of the game. So here goes. First off, I do agree with Danny Rojas from the great show Ted Lasso, who says football is life. There is so much about life in this game to be learned. The first one that I think of right now is something I've been kind of obsessed with: the role of the goalie in the game. The goalie is a really tough position. It's almost like no matter how well the goalie plays, it can never really be good enough, because a goalie might miss 1 out of 10 shots on goal, which would be a very, very good average, by the way, and might end up feeling like he has lost the game for the team. In fact, yesterday, it was the record for all time for the most shots blocked in a World Cup final game. This was unbelievable. This man's name, by the way, is Emiliano Dibu Martinez. Let's just face it. This man was playing with a broken finger and had all of the pressure of the World Cup final resting on his shoulders. He prevented so many goals. He could only do so much. His offensive team was not showing up on his behalf to make things a little bit better. But this one guy was preventing goals. Now, the strikers, on the other hand, a striker only needs to kick a goal like 1 out of every 10 tries, let's say, and he will be, using the pronoun he because we're talking about male soccer in this case, but it could be he, she, or they, will be the hero of the day. But in this case, the goalie has to prevent. The striker gets to enjoy striking. And I've taken great interest in this. I actually contacted a colleague of mine who is a former professional soccer player and now a professor at the University of Virginia. You've heard him on my podcast twice, Dr. Leidy Klotz, an amazing thinker, a great researcher. And I just was kind of as a throwaway comment, I said, dude, I need 5 minutes of your time. I just need to talk with you about the role of goalie, because it seems like it's a very different psychology. Prevention versus actually acquisition. Acquisition is the striker getting to kick the goal. And there is something in the research of positive psychology that there are two types of goals that we can have. We can either have an approach goal or an avoid goal. And an avoid goal, for example, is I don't want to be out of shape. An approach goal is I want to get strong. An avoid goal is I don't want to lose money. An approach goal is I want to gain money. The goalie is basically in an avoid mindset. He is trying to prevent the goals. Whereas the striker is saying, I want to acquire, I'm hunting. And what we found is when you engage the approach mindset, you're more likely to achieve your goal and you're more likely to have fun while you're going for it. So we really need to engage in the approach mindset. It turned out when I spoke with Leidy about this, we ended up talking for well over an hour about the psychology of goalie. That may become an episode unto itself because it is just so fascinating to me, the mindset of goalie. So we'll see about that in the future. Another thing that comes to my mind is something I learned from a world champion poker player. Her name is Annie Duke. She told me about the difference between resulting and decision making. Now, many of us in sports and in business, in terms of culturally, are more in the resulting category. We think about the results, and it almost doesn't matter how we get those results. What matters is what shows up on the scoreboard at the end of the day. But there's so much more that went into a game or into various aspects of life than what shows up on the scoreboard. What we know for sure, for example, is that the goalie was incredible. Will he be remembered for this? I don't know. I'd like to think so. I doubt it. I mean, think about it for a second. How much of the entirety of a thing is really remembered? Usually it's just the end result. And that's kind of sad because very often we make very good decisions and we don't get the result we want. Sometimes we make bad decisions and get a great result. And all we can really control is for the decisions that we make. So did the team play its best? Did the goalie do his best? Yes. Obviously, anybody who saw the game noticed, by the way, that this was a largely one-sided match. Spain just absolutely dominated throughout the game in just about every metric. And the fact that the goalie did so well in spite of all of that adversity, this one guy with a broken finger did so well, that should be at least as much of a headline as the fact that Spain won. Something else that comes to my mind is this idea that we will just do everything we can to ensure a legacy, that we will be remembered. And the fact is, most things are actually forgotten fairly quickly. I mean, think about it. Who won the 2004 Super Bowl? Who won the 2011 World Series? And who won the Oscar for Best Actress in, let's say, 2018? I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't. And I would stand to guess that most of us do not remember these things. So what really matters is living with integrity, of course, and doing the best we can to make good decisions along the way. There was something else, though. And what really got my goat was at the end of the game, Lionel Messi, who has been playing so brilliantly, he was the captain of his team at the age of 39, and he brought his team down from 48 teams who were competing to the final two. And the announcer on the broadcast declared that the king was dead. He said, "The king is dead." As you can tell, when he said this, it really upset me. That is such a terrible idea to put out there. Sure, if it bleeds, it leads. It will catch fire, this concept, and that's part of the problem. The king is most definitely alive. If Lionel Messi is considered dead in any capacity, then we are thinking way, way too small. This is a man who has scored and contributed to well over 900 goals throughout his career. This man has done unbelievable stuff for the game of soccer, and he is most certainly very much alive. So, yeah, I would say to the announcer, you are placing an idea in the minds of people that is not good for our mental health. You either win or you're dead. That is not okay. One thing I absolutely agree with is something that Christopher Nolan, the great director of such movies as recent as The Odyssey, but the part I'm going to call back is from Inception. He said, "There's nothing as durable as an idea." And what that announcer was doing was placing an idea into the listener's, into the viewer's mind, that we must win or we will basically be irrelevant. And I can think of many other alternatives to that. Yeah, the king is very much alive. The king and his team lost yesterday, but he's very much alive and he has had an incredibly beautiful career. I don't get it. Why there is something in the air that causes many people to need to say, that someone is diminished in order to say that someone else is great. Why does one person need to be the GOAT and diminish someone else? For example, the classic Michael Jordan, LeBron James debate, who's the greatest of all time? A lot of people feel very strongly in one direction or another. Another one is about the greatest quarterback and blah, blah, blah. Why can't we just have a lot of GOATs? Why can't there be a lot of greatest of all times? Does the fact that Lionel Messi is so amazing, does that mean that Pele is not one of the GOATs? Please, I mean, give me a break. Or Ronaldo, all of these people get to be GOATs. So I'm going to put out a wish that we find a way out of this binary idea of you either win or you're nothing, or there's a greatest of all time and everyone else is diminished. Please, let all the boats rise with the rising tide. There are so many players to enjoy, appreciate, and so many things in our life. We don't need to boil it down to one thing and diminish other things or other people. So this is just my plea. If cognitive flexibility is a hallmark of psychological well-being and cognitive rigidity is its opposite, let's move past the idea of a GOAT and let's embrace the idea of GOATs. Multiple great people, multiple great things and experiences. Let's enjoy the multitude and the bounty of wow, there are a lot of great players with lots of great attributes. So it's my hope that rather than just saying one person is the GOAT and diminishing everybody else, it's my hope that we can find a way to cognitively expand our ideas and appreciate the multitude of players and really recognize that there are so many GOATs to appreciate. So thanks for listening. I hope this is just a kind of a starting point for thought. I think that sports have so much to do with life if we're willing to extrapolate the wisdom and the virtues of people as they go out, giving it their all, leaving it all on the field. It's something we can all do in our own lives. And I think that at its best, being a good sport as we play sports, winning well, losing well, recognizing the virtues of the people who were out there, giving their all during a short period of time to see if they could get the results. But rather than the result exclusively, let's also think about the efforts that were placed on that field and human potential being recognized in sport. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to reach out to me. You know where to find me if you have any thoughts on what was shared today. This is Dr. Adam Dorsay thanking you for listening to SuperPsyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe